Antarctica is the most isolated landmass on Earth. It is a frozen, hostile environment that actively resists human exploration. To safely map this deadly terrain today, researchers rely heavily on unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, acting as their eyes in the sky. Antarctic clouds hide a mechanical threat: in-flight icing. Supercooled droplets strike a drone's propeller and instantaneously freeze into jagged ice crystals. As ice accumulates, aerodynamic drag increases by up to 400%, destroying lift until thrust fails and the drone plummets. Because this severe hazard grounds over 50% of critical drone operations before they even begin, humanity is left with massive, uncharted blind spots across the continent. Yet, despite these vast blind spots, satellite imagery occasionally breaks through the cloud cover to reveal things hidden deep within the remote landscape. Recently, users scanning Google Maps spotted a startling anomaly. Zooming in on a snowy mountain ridge revealed a massive, perfectly carved rectangular structure. It looks exactly like a giant door built straight into the rock and ice. It is easy to see why an image like this sparks immediate fascination. Antarctica already hosts bizarre natural oddities, like bloodfalls, where deep red, iron-rich liquid bleeds directly over the white glacier ice. These extremes prime the public to expect the impossible. The icy doorway sparked wild theories, from hidden extraterrestrial technology to secret subterranean layers. Deciphering this structure requires digging into a highly classified, heavily buried reality of American military history. In 1946, following the end of the Second World War, the United States government launched a massive mobilization effort to claim the southern ice. Under the command of Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the military initiated Operation High Jump. It was a staggering logistical deployment that brought 4,700 American troops down to the frozen continent. They arrived with an immense display of mechanical brute force. Heavily armed ships, massive silver propeller planes, and rows of tracked vehicles lined the ice runways. But they were entirely unprepared for the sudden, extreme weather shifts. Severe whiteouts blinded pilots, and freezing mechanics caused sudden engine failures, leading to multiple fatal plane crashes across the ice shelf. Operation High Jump proved a harsh lesson. Traditional military tactics and sheer manpower are utterly powerless against the reality of the Antarctic environment. In the decades that followed, the military shifted tactics. Instead of brute force, they attempted to establish permanent, advanced architectural footprints, like the sprawling industrial infrastructure of McMurdo Station. But building on ice proved equally dangerous. The original Old Pole Station was relentlessly crushed by the sheer weight of accumulating snow, warping so badly that the military was eventually forced to intentionally blow it up. Then there was the Byrd Surface Camp, a massive naval station constructed in the 1960s to serve as a long-term operational hub. Today, that entire camp is entombed 50 feet beneath the ice. The structure is preserved in the frozen dark, still containing heavy equipment like bulldozers and the personal belongings of the sailors who lived there. The most dangerous piece of hidden infrastructure, however, was located back at McMurdo Station, the highly classified PM-3A nuclear reactor. The military hoped to run the entire base on nuclear power. However, extreme cold and structural settling caused terrifying cracks in the reactor's containment vessel, forcing a quiet shutdown and a complete removal of the facility. The geological mechanism behind these disappearances is brutally simple. Continuous, year-over-year snow accumulation acts like a slow-moving trash compactor, pressing down with immense weight and slowly bending human engineering until it breaks. The Antarctic ice hides a graveyard of failed American military ambition, swallowed whole by the elements. The ice store looks different once placed within the context of the military's forgotten history. Bizarre geometric shapes found on the surface are vastly more likely to be the buried ruins of these forgotten military hubs. Alternatively, high-velocity winds and snow can act like a chisel, naturally carving harsh geometric right angles into massive blocks of compressed ice. Because Antarctica is physically disconnected from the rest of the world, it acts as a cultural echo chamber. In the absence of regular civilian access, conspiracy theories thrive unchecked by daily reality. Researchers at outposts like the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station maintain a strictly scientific presence today, focusing on climate data collection and cosmic ray observation. The continent acts as a blank white canvas where humans project their wildest fantasies, masking the much grimmer reality of what is actually buried down there. The secrets held beneath the ice are terrestrial, built from steel, concrete, and hubris. Beneath the surface lies a frozen monument to failed naval stations, lost aircraft, and abandoned nuclear ambition. It is a stark reminder that no matter how much advanced military might or nuclear power humanity brings to the ice, the most terrifying and unstoppable force on Earth remains nature itself.
In August 1946, with the smoke of World War II barely cleared, the United States military launched a massive, highly classified mission to the Antarctic. Under the command of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, they deployed a force larger than many national navies, 4,700 troops, 13 aircraft, and 70 ships, including heavy icebreakers designed to shatter the floes. The Navy described this as a standard military training and mapping mission intended to establish American presence in the far south. But the sheer scale of the Armada, sending thousands of combat-ready troops to a desolate, ice-covered wasteland, suggested a much more urgent objective than simple cartography. The mission was meant to last for 6 to 8 months. Instead, in February 1947, the entire operation was suddenly aborted after only 8 weeks. The environment had proved impossible to navigate. Helicopter rotors froze and shattered in midair, and heavy aircraft, like the Martin PBM Mariner, crashed into the snow, leaving 3 crewmen dead. This rapid, secretive withdrawal sparked decades of conspiracy theories, ranging from secret Nazi bunkers to encounters with extraterrestrial craft. The Navy's retreat was driven by a much more physical realization. They had encountered an environment that systematically dismantled their most advanced machinery. By the 1950s, the military changed tactics. Abandoning the idea of mobile fleets, they began constructing permanent outposts like the Old Pole Station to secure a year-round foothold. The Antarctic ice shelf presented a new threat. The ice acts like a slow, heavy liquid, constantly shifting and burying anything on the surface. By 1975, the weight had crushed the roof of the Old Pole Station, eventually turning the base into a hazardous sinkhole that had to be destroyed with explosives in 2010. This happened again at the 1960s Byrd Surface Camp. It now sits 50 feet beneath the surface, a frozen time capsule where record collections, a pool table, and a bulldozer are entombed in the ice. These permanent structures became targets for the ice. Even reinforced steel and wood couldn't resist the slow, inevitable compression of the shifting shelf. Beyond the structural damage, these buried stations faced a constant logistical crisis, the desperate need for heat and electricity to keep the crews alive. Relying on traditional liquid fuel was unsustainable. Personnel had to manually move crates and fuel drums through high-velocity winds across shifting ice, a supply chain that was both hazardous and inefficient. To maintain a camp this dense, the energy footprint was massive. In 1961, the military attempted a technological leap by installing the PM-3A nuclear power plant at McMurdo Station. This reactor was designed to provide a constant source of power, making the base entirely independent of physical supply lines. The military believed that by splitting the atom, they could finally bypass the brutal logistical limits of the South Pole. The project quickly unraveled. The extreme thermal contrast and shifting foundations placed severe mechanical stress on the reactor's components. The facility developed unexpected structural failures. Hairline cracks spread through the containment vessel, and radioactive water began leaking into the surrounding environment. With the risk of a meltdown increasing, the military accepted their technology was failing. The PM-3A was permanently decommissioned in 1972. The volatile conditions of the continent had proven too much for the era's most powerful energy source. Over 3 decades, the approach shifted from the brute force of a naval armada to the advanced engineering of a nuclear reactor. Each escalation was met with the same result. The history of these missions reveals a physical reality. The Antarctic ice shelf eventually breaks every machine and buries every structure placed upon it.
The mystery of the frozen South is found in the physical reality of its terrain. It remains the one environment on Earth that refuses to be tamed, where the sheer scale of the extremes simply outlasts our capacity to build
Internet
against them.
forums claim Antarctica is hiding extraterrestrial doors, ancient technology, or giant ice walls designed to keep humanity away from the edge of the world. These stories flourish because the continent is geographically inaccessible to almost everyone. In that total information vacuum, the human imagination fills the silence with mystery. But looking at the actual data and geology reveals a landscape that is often stranger than the theories used to explain it. The following chapters explore how millions of years of isolation have produced a specific set of chemical and physical laws that define life on the ice. This reddish-brown deposit at the base of Taylor Glacier was once widely known as blood falls. For decades, the sight of a visceral, dark liquid pouring out of pure white ice was a source of constant speculation. This 3D cross-section shows the reality. Deep beneath miles of ice, a hypersaline reservoir has been trapped for 2 million years. The water is so salt-heavy that it remains liquid even in sub-zero temperatures. The crushing weight of the glacier above forces this iron-rich water to the surface through tiny cracks. The moment it makes contact with the air, the iron oxidizes, it rusts, turning a deep red just as it breaches the ice. This extreme geological chemistry, preserved in the ice for millennia, explains the anomaly without the need for supernatural intervention. Satellite images of towering vertical ice shelves like this one are often used as evidence for a world-encircling ice wall, while blocky shapes on Google Maps are interpreted as hidden doors. In this image, distant landmasses appear to float above the horizon. This is a fata morgana, a severe optical illusion caused by extreme cold air bending light to project false walls and stretched structures into the sky. While the internet searches for secret lairs, the actual human settlements are remarkably ordinary. This view of McMurdo Station shows tan and green industrial buildings focused entirely on heavy logistics, cleaning, and dining. Approximately 80% of the people at these stations are civilian support staff, living in high-density, shared housing. In such a small, isolated community, the constant social proximity makes keeping large-scale secrets virtually impossible. The surface of Antarctica consists of explained atmospheric tricks and repetitive daily chores. To find the real secrets, we must look deeper. Scientists are now moving past the top layers of snow and drilling miles straight down into the pitch-black ice. Ground-penetrating radar scans have recently mapped massive liquid subglacial lakes hidden entirely beneath the solid ice sheet. The current objective is to drill into these pristine waters to find microorganisms that have been biologically isolated from the rest of the planet for millions of years. These subglacial organisms represent a biological timeline that has remained untouched since before the rise of modern humans, thriving in an environment of total darkness and immense pressure. Beyond the physical environment, the ice exerts a profound influence on human observers trapped within it. During an Antarctic winter, the temperature stays at -73 degrees Celsius, and the sun does not rise for 6 continuous months. This lone, partially buried structure illustrates the reality of the work. You are removed from every familiar sound and comfort of human civilization, and that level of sensory deprivation begins to change how you perceive your surroundings. This environment is the source of the continent's ghost stories. Under extreme stress and isolation, the human mind often fills the silence with hallucinations, projecting terrors into the empty corridors of the base. Antarctica does not require science fiction theories to be haunting. The ice provides a level of isolation that systematically tests the limits of the human mind.